Nggak perlu ribet kalau ada cara mudah untuk punya rumah. BTN Property pertama di Indonesia. Aplikasi properti milik bank dengan 4D Virtual Survey. Survei lokasinya secara online. Pengajuan KPR-nya juga secara online. So simple. Untuk new experience membeli rumah secara online, cuma di BTN Property. Solusi mudah, miliki rumah. Download aplikasinya sekarang.
Okay, good morning, everybody. My name's Tom Dreesen. It's my distinct honor to be the moderator and chair of this session entitled the ESCO Summit. Many of you, I may know many of you, I've been working in Indonesia for 12 years, and I've been in the ESCO business for almost 40 years, and been working here to try to promote the ESCO industry for at least 5-6 years under the Asia Development Bank predominantly. But the ESCO business model is really targeted by the Indonesian government to contribute mightily to the energy performance industry. And that's the purpose of this session, that we plan to address the challenges and what it takes to make the ESCO business model perform as expected by the government. And I'm really honored today to be able to say that we have as our lead speaker to kick off this session, the Dirjen of renewable and energy conservation, Pak Dadan Kusdiana, who's going to lead off our session and give some opening remarks on the government sector support of the ESCO industry. So before joining as Dirjen, he was head of the research and development agency for MEMR, and then also senior advisor to the Ministry of the Economic and Natural Resources. So again, it's my distinct pleasure to introduce Pak Dadan. Please, Pak Dadan.
Thank you. Thank you, Pak Thomas. Pak Thomas Dreesen, very good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi. Salam sehat untuk kita semua. So I would like to start with, yes, thank you for the introduction, Pak Thomas. And the topic for this morning, I think, is related with ESCO. So I would like to share some slides to have the information shared perfectly, and also just to keep in time. Ibu Bapak sekalian, next. So I would like to start with providing you with the target of NDC. So Indonesia has defined long-term carbon emission reduction objectives as part of our NDC. In the NDC, the energy sector is playing an important role. The energy sector is targeted to reduce greenhouse gas emission by 314 million tons of CO2 by 2030. This is accounted for 38% of our national emission reduction target in 2030, or this is equivalent to 29% of the target. Emission reduction in the energy sector will be achieved through the implementation of various programs as defined in the 2019 roadmap of NDC implementation on mitigation action. Ibu sekalian, while the economy is slowly recovering due to COVID-19 pandemic, as domestic and global economies are reopened and the Indonesian government rollout of its COVID stimulus package, socio-economic consequences are likely to be long-lasting. The global financial crisis is inevitable as the COVID-19 virus outbreak has forced many strategic sectors to their lowest level, including the energy sector. In this pandemic situation, we promote energy management programs in industrial sectors, as well as also building owners to reduce their operational costs of energy usage. Case studies have demonstrated the value of implementing energy management systems, showing energy performance improvements of 10% or even more, with most improvement in some cases 70% of more coming from low or no cost operational enhancement. Implementation of energy management will also benefit an environmentally friendly company's image and increase its product competitiveness. Government regulation number 70 in 2009 concerning energy conservation also mandates that energy users of more than 6,000 ton oil equivalent per year must implement energy management through the appointment of energy managers, preparing of energy conservation programs, periodically energy audit and implementation of its result, as well as reporting on the implementation of energy conservation to the government through the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. So currently the government is revising this government regulation number 70 on energy conservation. Next, the implementation of energy management is essential because through energy management, energy efficiency can be carried out systematically and sustainably, which will increase the industry's competitiveness. As one of several efforts to foster energy efficiency investment, government has already stimulated energy efficiency investment through energy audit and investment grade audit, covering industrial and building sectors, calculated around $119.5 million for energy efficiency investment potential. However, during implementation since 2015 to 2020, there was around $50 million. However, there are still more than half of capital needed to be mobilized to implement the gap. Hence, the correlating to post-pandemic recovery and the effort to fulfill the pledge on NDC, it is a great opportunity for Indonesia also to start promoting energy efficiency sector along with renewable energy for creating market and more jobs. ESCO is one of the findings that offer an innovative scheme of financing by providing services that encourage energy efficiency investment in terms of saving and solution for reducing technology risk and also the financial risk. Next, there are several barriers for energy user to implement energy efficiency project, such as limited internal capital, inadequate information and technical expertise, lack of interest or motivation among energy users, perception among lenders of high risk and limited capability to estimate energy savings, as well as lack of understanding among lenders about the business model. So ESCO offering solution to answer those problems. ESCO could mobilize commercial financing with loan repayment made from saving and giving positive cash flow throughout the project. ESCO also provide technical skills and expertise to identify, assess, and the installment. ESCO will demonstrate benefits of efficient equipment and facility modernization mobilize external financing, facilitate installation, and also offer simplified turnkey arrangement. ESCO also offer performance-based contracts, clearly define project benefit and cost, demonstrates low risk of projects already implemented, and conducts formal measurement and, of course, verification. So ESCO demonstrates the success of business model and increase the credibility of performance contracting. Most of agreement between user and ESCO are generally using energy saving performance contract. The ESPC engages the ESCO to perform the installation of the efficient equipment, then provide performance guarantees and establish the ongoing prepayment terms. ECPC proposed to increase level of confidence in guaranteed energy savings for end user and also for the ESCO, and become a reliable source of income. The two most common type of ESPC are sharing saving and guaranteed savings. Share saving is a good model as an introduction to ESCO market, because in this model, the user is assumed to not accept the risk. But this model tends to limit long-term development and reduce competition in the ESCO industry. In the guaranteed saving model, it is difficult to be used as an ESCO introduction model as an effort to develop the market, because the user is assumed to accept the risk of accepting investment. However, this scheme will accelerate the long term of ESCO industry. Both of schemes are attractive, but they meet challenges to develop. Ibu Bapak sekalian, the energy services market, which has played an important role in delivering energy performance improvement in other major economies like China, India, the United States, and also Europe, remains quite nascent in Indonesia. The challenges are real. ESCO models are quite complex and require strong legal financing, accounting, and also the business model infrastructure, which is often lacking in developing countries like here in Indonesia. Commercial lenders are unfamiliar with the models and lack developed procedures for technical due diligence and project appraisal. Thus, the problem remains same story. On lack of sufficient capital or debt issues such as collateral for money ESCO to meet banks' requests for a guarantee, which led to the bank perception that ESCO projects carry high risk. As a result of these challenges, replicating the share-saving model, which requires the ESCOs have strong balance sheets, or the guaranteed saving model, which require credible guarantees, has proven to be challenging in Indonesia. For some cases, the outsourced energy management model requires a long-term contract, even over 10 years. That may be difficult to implement in developing markets with weaker legal and contract frameworks, as less creditworthy customers. Also, for public sectors, the difficulty is notably because of limitation to government institutions entering multi-year contract. So we have lots of strong and serious effort to overcome those barriers. In this remarkable moment, I will share to you two samples of ESCO here in Indonesia implementation in the building sectors. The first, there was in a shopping mall in Bandung, implement energy efficiency equipment on cooling around 1.3 billion rupiah with ESPC contract for 4 years under self-saving model. The shopping mall received benefit from this contract for quite some time. However, by seeing this benefit, the consumer tends to change the contract from saving to fixed payment. Another story was an office building in Jakarta planned to deal with ESCO scheme by using IGA facility from the government. They plan to retrofit 1 unit of air-cooled to water-cooled chiller. The project is estimated around 3.2 billion rupiah and the calculated saving around 1.2 billion rupiah per year, respectively. However, the challenge came from the ESCO company. They see a risk of a fair repayment from customer. For this reason, the ESCO asked for a guarantee in the event of failure. The ESCO came to an insurance company to seek an opportunity of this guarantee. Nevertheless, there was no appropriate product of guarantee in our insurance business. Added to this, the insurance company required 100% value of asset as collateral of ESCO, and fairly high premium because the insurance company did not recognize the ESCO business model. So, Ibu Bapak sekalian, we need to act now, starting to harmonizing and strengthening of policy to support ESCO to give umbrella as business and regulatory guarantee for ESCO as first of the key enablers of its development. Government, along with MASKE, Afkenindo, and also many experts, have already drafted several points to introduce ESCO on revise of the government regulation on energy conservation. Second, increasing enforceable of ESCO by bankability increment is a must to adjust perception of financial institution or bank to access debt by collaboration with OJK and also financial institution to find a way of unravel trade of perception and commercial loan issues. The third, due to the lack of successful of both share saving and also guarantee saving of energy service market in Indonesia, we can start developing innovative financing scheme. Simple business models adjusted to local market conditions should be used to introduce ESCO markets in the country. Fourth, we can help jumpstart the market through initiatives such as pilot ESCO projects. Efforts to demonstrate successful application will increase market confidence and create more attractive conditions for efficiency, energy, finance, and the investment. The fifth, we also can collaborate with special mission vehicles such as PT SMI and also BP DLH to support ESCO business as financial institution or trustee. Also with international collaboration for gathering information and also the global network of ESCO. Additional support can include measures to enable energy service companies, the ESCOs, such as continued training on investment grade audits and also development of certification of third-party monitoring and evaluation. Last, the sixth, to get a significant number of interest, a scope of easiness of the business process by developing and offering digital technology combined with smart technology should be considered by ESCO. ESCO should enter into digital world to get information and cooperation globally. The pandemic situation is an advantage of development of information technology and define new perception of the market. So, Ibu Bapak sekalian, we secretly hope that this event will provide new motivation, insights, ideas, and also the thoughts to support the improvement and application of energy efficiency for the industry sector in the future. We greatly appreciate the MASKE Corporation in supporting and being our partner for years for drafting regulation, doing capacity building, advice, and many more, especially in the current situation. With this support, this could be our momentum to promote and scale up the ESCO, including efficiency and successfully supporting the emission reduction. To all, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your participation. I wish you all very successful in the fruitful discussion. I hope this event should spawn meaningful effort. Let us walk the talk, help the government to help the others. The climate change is real, and the world is in the difficult situation. The countdown has begun. So thank you, Pak Thomas. Thank you all. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Pak Dadan. I'm very impressed with your knowledge of the ESCO model, and you did an excellent job, comprehensive job of identifying the benefits, the barriers, and perhaps steps going forward. I don't know if you're sticking around. We have one question. Do you have time to answer perhaps one question, Padadan, that came up?
Yes, please.
So this came in from Erwin Kasim. It says the challenge to execute EE project entity to provide guarantee to get loan, how entity can support from government or from guarantor. So I guess they're trying to, the question is, how can the entity get support from the government or a guarantor when it comes to executing an EE project on the financing side? If you have any thoughts on that. Is that
well?
Clear?
Yeah. That one is quite difficult issue, yes, so far.
Yes, it is.
But we know that within the government we have state-owned companies, and some of the state-owned companies are also working on the financial institution, including the insurance. I've tried also to discuss this issue some years ago, and I think we have the opportunity also to talk with these companies. I mean, the state-owned companies that are working specifically on the insurance projects. So,
yeah, you're right.
I think there is possibilities for that, Pak Thomas.
I think you're right. I will tell you, I've been working for years. I did a project under ADB for the Indonesia Exim Bank in 2014, and they were very much in favor of doing what I feel is needed in the marketplace, and that is provide an energy savings insurance product. So it guarantees the savings, because that's you'll hear my presentation, that's one of the biggest gaps in the marketplace is the end users don't have knowledge about how the savings are going to be achieved, measured, verified. And ESCOs are a new market. I'm getting into my presentation. I don't want to get too far. But anyway, the bottom line is energy savings insurance, energy insurance, and partial credit guarantees, another major potential benefit because of the collateral requirements from the banks, if we can get partial credit guarantees. So those are the two big barriers that I've been working on. And I'm working in several other countries, including Vietnam, Thailand, and Philippines, which is very advanced with a new energy efficiency law, and they all have the same needs in the marketplace for those type of products to open up and really kind of gain confidence and remove barriers in the marketplace. Sorry, a little bit long answer, but yeah, I think you're exactly right. The insurance product is the ultimate solution from a reputable player in the marketplace. Okay. So is there another question here real quickly? No, it's the same. Okay, so I'm going to move in then, I guess, into my presentation. My apologies for moderating and also presenting. That's a bit presumptuous on my part, but I wanted to kind of set the framework from my knowledge of having been here 12 years and having had ESCOs in 10 countries and having worked for at least 3 to 4 years in trying to do industrial ESCO work here in the country and running into many challenges. So I wanted to offer my insights to the participants with respect to the ESCO barriers and solutions that I see in Indonesia. So could we please have my presentation put up, please? Is somebody doing that? Or should I put it on myself, share my screen? Hello, can we have some assistance? Is somebody helping us from the IEECCE to put my presentation up, please? Next presentation. Oh, there it is. Okay. Got it. All right. Maybe you can expand. So what I'm going to talk about is, and I'm just going to highlight my first slide here, just to elaborate a little bit on it very well. But just to be clear, because there's different definitions in several countries. But an ESCO is an energy services company that turnkey identifies, develops, implements, and finances EE projects on a pay-from-savings basis. And as Padadan showed, there's a guaranteed savings model and shared savings, but they both are based on the ESCO turnkeying, doing everything, identifying it, develop it, implement it, finance it, and take the long-term performance risk. So they assume all the performance and funding risk, including providing all the working capital to develop the project, which includes an investment-grade audit, and then funding all the capital expenditure, the CapEx, and having it at risk for being repaid from savings. So one of the big benefits of the ESCO model is the development risk, which tends to not always be understood and really is a true benefit in the governmental sector because of the ESCO being providing the development, the identification of the measures, the concepts, and then the actual investment-grade audit. So all of that is done at no cost, and at the end of the day, if the ESCO cannot arrive at a project that identify a project that can be paid from savings, the facility owner does not have to pay anything. So it's a really tremendous shift in the risk of the performance and development of the project. And just a quick summary of all the services required for an ESCO to do that type of turnkey, to provide that service. They do the feasibility study, investment-grade audit, financing, the EPC, which is engineering, procurement, and construction, and also one of the biggest pieces that's a gap in the marketplace is measurement verification of savings, which is not very well known and very little that has been experienced in the Indonesian market, nor the other three Southeast Asian markets that I was talking about, which again, that I've been working quite a bit in is the Philippines, Vietnam, and Thailand. Next slide, please. Yeah, so could you move it up a little bit so I get the last bullet? So many of the barriers that so can everybody else see the bottom of the slide? I don't know if you can see it or not. Can you move the slide up, down a little bit to get all the bullets at the bottom? Don't. Yes, thank you. So these are the barriers that I see for ESCOs in Indonesia, and Padadan did a great job of identifying the barriers for ESCOs, and these are ones that I personally have experienced, and I think are that I feel are very critical to overcome and are creating problems for ESCOs to be successful in Indonesia. First one, of course, is the low electric rates, which is something that can't really be helped per se, but the result of that is it results in long payback periods, which creates the need for long-term contracts, 10 years plus, as was stated earlier. And that's a problem for many facility owners not wanting to enter into agreements for that long period of time. The second one, and this is probably one of the biggest ones, is there's this low EE market demand. And that's one of the biggest problems that I see in Indonesia. The financing's a problem, and risks and perception of risk are a problem. At the end of the day is, from the industrial and private sector, there's relatively low market demand for energy efficiency, and that's due to the low energy knowledge. The EE knowledge is what I call almost a void in the marketplace, because they've been told for years, don't look at energy efficiency. The paybacks are not good because of low electric rates. So because of that, there's very limited capacity and very little knowledge about EE, low awareness and low understanding, therefore low confidence in energy savings. So when you couple that with a nascent new ESCO industry where there's no supporting regulation, no credibility, and low capacity to develop bankable projects, it creates a pretty formidable barrier for the market. And then adding, of course, the lack of commercially attractive EE financing. Again, these barriers are very common in all four countries that I'm working in Southeast Asia. This is not just a phenomenon within Indonesia. And then the major EE market barriers that you have that I'm going to go over quickly with private sector facility owners, they have their own set of barriers. And the facility owners are probably the most critical, in my opinion, people that have to be dealt with and addressed, because they are the gatekeepers for energy efficiency projects. If they don't want to proceed with the project, it doesn't get done. So it doesn't matter how attractive financing, incentives, if they are not convinced that they want to implement an energy efficiency project, the market is not going to be penetrated. And then, of course, the last is there's major, on the governmental side, As Padadon noted, that there's barriers to the government sector. There's major regulatory barriers preventing ESCOs from implementing, as he said, and it's correct, long-term multi-year savings, paid from savings business model, which I'm going to address later in this presentation. Next slide, please. So these are just major barriers that I feel are worth letting everybody be aware of that I've faced personally in the country with my industrial ESCO. Is essentially the facility owners view EE projects as infrastructure investments, replacing a boiler, a chiller, a motor. They view that as an infrastructure investment and don't fix it and not to do it until it's broken. Excuse me. And it cannot compete with their capital. Excuse me. Next barrier is a lack of understanding and competence in EE technologies. You have to excuse me a minute. I have to get some water. My apologies. There, my apologies. My only excuse is I flew in. I just finished my 5-day quarantine and got up this morning and left the hotel, so my apologies. So the other main barriers is a lack of understanding and confidence, the same as before. They really don't have any understanding of the savings being achieved or measured and verified. In my project with the Indonesia EXIM Bank, we lost several projects that were approved for funding, and at the end of the day, the CEO would come in and say, if this loan if the savings are not achieved, do we have to still repay the loan? And the answer was yes. And so they ended up not doing the project. So the other item, I've got something on my screen here. Okay. So EE projects, they're too small to get on the radar screen of a CEO is another major barrier. And they're reluctant to use their corporate financial capital because all banks typically do corporate finance only, not project-based lending. Next slide, please. So solutions. The solutions are that if you look at in the places where the ESCO industries have thrived, they thrived in countries where the government has actively implemented paid from savings projects with private sector entities. That's where the ESCO industries have thrived. That's the case in the U.S. and in UK, although not in, I was saying, China to a large degree is private sector, although there's government support. But there's a lot of government support, I'm sorry, and they do penetrate the government market. And so the reason for this is that allows ESCOs to access the large untapped government EE market. That's the solution. And then we've gotten a concurrence on that 3 years ago with the ADB program. And so what we're doing is the market is quite large, and this is my estimate of the market of what I think is you've got the government-owned offices at hospitals that I estimate the untapped market annual savings of roughly almost 227 million, investment of 1.8 billion. And the public street lighting alone, I believe is a market potential savings of 183 million USD, or 3 trillion rupees, and 16 trillion rupees, so 1.1 billion. So the market is huge in the governmental sector, and it's virtually untapped in Indonesia. And that's one of the that's the solution that we're pursuing. We have been with ADB is to open up the government market through for ESCOs. It creates a built-in market. When that happens, the demand that ESCO, the government sector, does RFPs, creates a demand for the market where there currently is none. It's going to take forever if you have to wait for the private sector to come on board. It will also create awareness, knowledge, templates will be developed, and the whole industry will start thriving. That's what we've learned in almost all countries. But again, this is the same barrier the other three Southeast Asia countries. Next slide, please. So what we're doing, we've been working on this for a while, is creating an ESCO market for government projects through the synchronization of public-private partnership regulation. We've been working on that under the ADB program for almost 3 years. And what we're working on is developing an ability for government facilities to have EE projects implemented on a paid-for-savings basis by removing the primary 3 barriers that are that are prevalent in all countries, all Southeast Asia. The first one is they can't enter into multi-year savings, they can't make multi-year savings payments. The second one is, and that's just because they typically can only allocate funding for the current fiscal year. The second thing is that they're not allowed to retain savings in their budgets. Once these savings are realized, their budgets go down in the next year and they don't have funds available to repay an ESCO savings. That is very common in all countries. And the last one, and by no means the least of the barriers, is the procurement requirement to select the lowest cost proposals versus what the best savings benefits. So these are three common, very strong barriers for private sector ESCOs to do business in the government sector. When I was president of the National Association of ESCOs like 30 years ago, we had to address this through regulation in each of the states, of the 50 states. And so one of the benefits here is the public-private partnership is already set up, the regulation. It requires some rather minor synchronizations to be able to use it, because the PPP regulation is already designed for the private sector to implement infrastructure projects. Unfortunately, it's geared towards large greenfield infrastructure projects, toll roads, revenue-based, which is not applicable to EE projects. But we've been working for a while on how to streamline that to the smaller brownfield savings-based projects, EE projects. And we've got that, we've been working on it again for like 3 years under the ADB with ADB support. And in fact, I'll show you, we're going to do that on the next slide. We think we're in a position now through rather minor revisions, additional revisions to PPP 70/2009. Next slide, please. Yeah, so as Padam was talking about, they're currently, MEMR is currently revising its PPP 70/2009. And with these two rather minor additional revisions, we can open up the door and remove barriers through the existing public-private partnership process. And one is to just simply connect the availability payments, which is a term used for public-private partnership, to allow that to include energy savings payments, so that they can then be used to offset the amount of negative impact the availability payment has for a government agency. The next thing is to just simply reference ESCO implementation guidelines to be issued by, subsequently issued by MEMR, and those are the ones that will streamline the planning and preparation phases of the current public-private partnership. So that's the second piece. So those two things are really the only two references needed within the PPP. And then, of course, the next piece will be developing the ESCO implementation guidelines. So one of the things that we had suggested under my ADB work was to help accelerate the government market. We also suggested in revisions to mandate all government agencies to reduce their energy consumption by a percentage, which we would like, we think makes sense to be whatever in the National Energy Plan, which is currently 17.4%. So we think that would be a real good thing to put in, if we could, have put in the revision of the PPP 70 to require government agencies to mandate reductions. Next slide, please. So I think the benefits have already been well articulated by Padam in terms of for the paid from savings. It's the ability, the big one for using the PPP, of course, is that was not addressed, is that it provides the ability to remove the government agency barriers through rather minor synchronization of existing PPP regs versus introducing a new regulation like we had to do in the U.S., China had to do it, and of course one of the benefits is currently in the Philippines, which I think Alex Ablaza is going to talk about, is the new energy law in the Philippines, which contemplates, but that was done through a regulation, a complete national regulation, energy efficiency regulation. But in lieu of that, just revising the existing regulation is by far the most efficient and timely way of getting it done. The other benefits have already been stated about no upfront capital, but with the PPP, as I said, by having energy savings be included in availability payments, it can offset them and significantly reduce the negative budget impact to the government agencies. And I already talked about the benefit of no development risk. But the other one that I didn't talk too much about is the reductions in greenhouse gas emissions that in any type of ESCO project we typically require globally recognized, generally accepted M&B principles. And we're going to hear talk about later in this summit, the capacity building, about a new capacity building program called the Certified Energy Savings Verifier by Efficiency Evaluation Organization, EVO, which has principles will enhance the reliability of reductions being achieved. And of course, so I think next slide, please. I think that's the end of my presentation. So I don't know if there's any quick questions that I might address. If there are, I might address them real quickly. Again, another one to Don. He's asking about the PPP scheme. So I think I've addressed the PPP from Irwan Kasim. If you have another question, I think I've addressed that one. Okay, so if there are none, no questions, I'm gonna move ahead. And we're gonna, I was really happy, Donald Gilligan was unable to attend our session because of a conflict he had in the US, but he did a great job of creating a presentation where he has actually made it, done the narrative for each slide. And I think the IEECCE staff is now, if you could please run this, the slideshow with the narrative from Donald Gilligan, who's the president of National Association of Energy Service Companies. I've known him for like 40 years. He actually ran an ESCO and has been the president of NAESCO for at least 15 years, to my knowledge. He's been around for a long time, and he's aware of all the effort that was put in by NAESCO to create the government sector, because the ESCO market is flourishing because of the huge governmental sector in the United States. That's the primary market that has been penetrated and has success. So without any further delay, could you please run Donald's presentation with the video?
Hello, and thank you for inviting me to your conference. I'm Donald Gilligan, the President of the National Association of Energy Service Companies, what we call NAESCO, in the United States. And I'm going to talk for a few minutes about what we have learned in the development of the U.S. ESCO industry that might be helpful to you as you develop the industry in Indonesia. My presentation will be divided into 5 sections. I'll provide a short introduction to NAESCO, talk for a few minutes about the phases of the U.S. industry growth, what we see as the major market drivers, what we have experienced as the role of technology in the growth of the industry, and then talk about risk management, which we think is the most important aspect of the business management. NAESCO, is the National Trade Association of Energy Service Companies in the U.S. We were founded in 1983. We have about 110 members. I'm saying about because we're in a growth spurt and we're adding members on a weekly basis. 42 of our members are ESCOs. The rest are affiliates that provide equipment and services to ESCOs. Our members implement about $7 billion of projects annually, and historically we have delivered $60 billion in projects paid from savings, about 500 person-years of direct employment, and very substantial CO2 reductions. Our projects include energy efficiency, renewable energy, and a full array of sustainability technologies, which I'll talk about later in the presentation. And virtually all of our projects are performance contracts in public facilities. First, I would like to talk about the phases of ESCO growth in the U.S. This graphic shows how the industry has grown in the past 30 years. The growth has been pretty steady, even through the financial recession in 2008 to 2011, and we anticipate continuing this growth trend over the next few years. The first phase of U.S. ESCO industry, which both Tom Dreesen and I experienced, was from about 1985 to about 1995. U.S. utilities were required to solicit bids for energy, what they called energy efficiency power plants. The utilities paid for kilowatt hours delivered, which were typically 80 to 100% of the project cost. The monitoring and verification of savings was very similar to what we know as utility metering, and it cost about 15% of the total project cost. At the ESCO industry grew up assembling turnkey service packages, so we took a project all the way from the initial audit through long-term maintenance and savings guarantees. The measures were mostly lighting and controls, and our target customers were high run-hour customers. So they were industrials, hospitals, prisons, some schools. As I remember, the minimum cutoff we were looking for was something like 3,500 to 4,000 run-hours a year. The financing of the projects was on the ESCO balance sheets using shared savings contracts, in which the ESCO assumed both the project performance risk and the credit risk. The second phase of the ESCO industry in the U.S. was a significant evolution from the mid-1990s into the early to mid-2000s. Customers were becoming much more comfortable with energy efficiency technologies. The federal and state governments in the U.S. authorized performance contracting in all of their public facilities, primarily because these government agencies had imposed savings mandates on the public facilities, but provided very little in the way of capital appropriations to finance the necessary improvements to cut energy use. Our projects became much larger and more complex, which in turn increased the project development costs and risks. In the U.S., the development time for a project ranges from 1 year to maybe 2 to 2.5 years, during which the ESCO has to carry those development costs, which is a real risk to the business. The consequence was that many of the entrepreneurial ESCO companies found that they could not continue to grow and compete in that business. And utilities were very anxious at that time to buy ESCOs. So there were, in the late 1990s and early 2000s, there were maybe 50 utility-owned ESCOs. That trend only lasted for a few years. Today, as NAESCO members, we have maybe 5 or 6 utility-owned ESCOs. The ESCO industry developed a new financing model in which guaranteed savings replaced shared savings, which brought banks and specialized financing companies into the business. They were able to dramatically lower interest rates in the U.S. market from something like approaching 20% implied interest in shared savings contracts to under 5% for most contracts that are guaranteed savings. We also worked with a number of organizations, Major Engineering Association in the U.S., the Department of Energy, and a few other groups to create the IPMVP, which I think many of you probably use today in your projects. Side note is that both Tom Dreesen and I are on the board of the Efficiency Valuation Organization, which is the international group that maintains and updates the IPMVP. And here are a couple of graphics to show the growth of the industry in the U.S. during this period and beyond. This data comes from studies that were done by the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory based on projects that ESCOs have submitted to their ESCO project database. So as you can see, this is a graphic of the number of different measures in projects. And you can see in most market segments there's been a pretty steady growth of the number of projects. This next graphic shows the investment levels per square foot. So the projects are becoming more comprehensive, more complex, and also much bigger in terms of the total dollar value of the projects. The third phase of the business, from a structural standpoint, really started in the mid-2000s, and the impact of that business has that ESCOs have focused almost exclusively on public facilities. Several reasons for that. At the beginning of this millennium, industrial and large commercial customers signed up, many of these customers signed up for long-term contracts with Enron and a number of vendors who were competing with Enron who sold projects that they could not fulfill. The industrial and large commercial customers really felt burned by this, and they basically backed off from the notion of signing any long-term deals. ESCOs, therefore, turned their focus to public buildings. Public buildings, the market is driven by energy savings mandates, by a lack of capital for deferred maintenance and just basic capital improvements, which meant that the size of the projects could expand significantly. We were able to address that market need because our projects pay for improvements with savings. So savings coming from both the elimination of energy waste and the elimination of maintenance on decrepit equipment. Our projects typically have 10 to 20-year paybacks, up to 25 years in the federal market. And ESCOs have gradually added technologies to meet customer needs. So we started with energy efficiency, lighting and controls, expanded to the whole range of efficiency technologies, distributed generation, renewables, now energy storage is becoming a big deal in the U.S., street lighting, retrofits, and a significantly growing market in the U.S. is water and wastewater infrastructure. Both the metering side of the infrastructure and the pumps and processing in the water supply and wastewater treatment. The utility subsidies across the country help the project economics, but they're really not a major driver in the U.S. This is a graphic which just summarizes what I've just said, and you can see that the private facilities are in the orange bar at the top of each of these columns. Less than 10% of our market is in private facilities. This next couple of slides talks about the major market drivers, which I've already introduced in the previous couple of slides: government savings mandates and building needs. The government mandates are very significant in most markets. So the federal government has had for 20 or 25 years a series of goals that require federal facilities to reduce their energy consumption, typically 2 to 3% a year. 2 to 3% doesn't sound like a lot, but when you compound that over time, it's quite a significant reduction. On the public facility needs, the estimates are that conservative estimate is that public facilities need about $1 trillion of capital investment. Half of our schools need major work on their heating, ventilating, and air conditioning systems. As an example of that, schools in one state, Illinois, have more than $7.5 billion of deferred maintenance needs. At the same time, there's little or no capital funding available to meet either the mandates or the building needs. The government role has been to try and drive the market through administrative action, since they're not willing to appropriate the money required to make the retrofits. They've helped the industry grow a lot through things like standardized performance contracting project processes and documents, competitive solicitations to create lists of qualified ESCOs so that customers can be secure that they're choosing quality companies rather than fly-by-night companies. There are several states have implemented policies that require state agencies to implement all cost-effective performance contracts. And on top of that, during the Obama administration, starting in 2011, there was a $4 billion, what was called Performance Contracting Challenge, which is that the president directed agencies to implement at least $4 billion worth of performance contracts in 4 years. We met that challenge, and that effort was led by Tim Unruh, who is now NAESCO's executive director, but at the time he ran the Federal Energy Management Program, which achieved this goal. This slide is a little bit complicated, and you may have to look at it for a few minutes before you quite grasp what it's trying to do. But this is a graphic, again, produced by the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, which is asking ESCOs how many of their customers are doing projects that are primarily driven by the need for capital to make improvements rather than trying to save energy. And as you can see, in most cases, the demand for performance contracting projects for capital improvement is more than 50%. The next couple of slides deal with what we think has been the role of technologies in the growth of the US and ESCO industry. Our conclusion is that technologies are not the key to long-term growth, but as you'll see, the growth actually comes in waves of technology. This is looking at 3 different technologies as examples of the wave situation that we have observed. So on the far left, lighting was the first technology that really was promulgated by ESCOs. It drove the first phase of growth of the market. ESCOs dominated the market because they knew the technology better than anybody else in the business, and they actually had to warehouse equipment because normal electrical distributors wouldn't do that. But over a few years, the market caught up. Lighting firms learned the new technology. Project specifications became very routine. Equipment was stocked by distributors in big box stores. And so what happened is that ESCOs learned to partner with lighting firms to shift the risk to the lighting firms from the ESCO. Second stage was HVAC and controls. Again, a similar kind of situation. ESCOs led off, particularly the large companies that were owned by major control manufacturers like Honeywell or Johnson Controls or Siemens. They were able to manage these kinds of complex projects pretty well, but again, the market caught up and ESCOs learned to partner with mechanical contractors. We've also seen the same trend in solar photovoltaic on customer facilities. Initially, the ESCOs bundled PV into a comprehensive project because the short-term paybacks of lighting and controls enabled the project to include the long-term photovoltaics. Again, the market caught up, and ESCOs learned to partner with people who had been their competitors. And this is a graphic. Again, it's one of these complicated graphics that'll need a little study, but it shows what we call the dominant retrofit strategy in the different market segments in the different time bins over the last 30 years. And the final section is what we think we have learned about what's really key to the ESCO business, which is risk management. We see several different areas of risk management, and the key to success is to identify and minimize those risks. So the first risk is marketing and sales. Understand what you're selling. You're selling comprehensive, in the US, we're selling comprehensive long payback projects. So we need to identify which customers want to buy that. One of the biggest risks here is trying to nurse along customers who are really don't fit that profile. And we like to say in the business that the second best first sales call is a quick goodbye. In contracts and construction, ESCOs have learned to use construction professionals, both attorneys and construction managers. We've learned that many design engineers aren't particularly good at managing construction. They don't like to do it. It's not that interesting. So we've switched to construction managers. On the monitoring and verification of savings, we have learned that the key is to make sure that the customer understands exactly what you're guaranteeing, what you're not guaranteeing, what the customer's responsibilities are in the contract, and what the ESCO is going to do long-term during the course of the contract. All the project documents should be stored electronically to make sure that they're accessible during the entire term of the contract. And you should regularly review the savings results with the customer. Number one, to make sure the customer understands what you have done and what results they're getting. And number two, we think these reviews offer a selling opportunity for ESCOs. So that's the end of my presentation. Here is my contact information. If you have any questions or want some follow-up information, I'd be happy to respond. I hope that you have a good and successful conference, and good luck to all of you.
Wow, that was a very comprehensive presentation by Donald. We appreciate it, and hopefully the participants got a lot of knowledge out of the success of the ESCO industry in the U.S. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but if any questions come up, I'm very happy to address them because I was participating in much of that marketplace up until about 15 years ago. So I want to move forward so we don't run out of time, and our next presentation is going to go over to the Philippines, where I've been working a little bit with Alex Ablaza, who's the president of the Philippines Energy Efficiency Alliance. And he's been very active there in promoting the market. He's a real champion of the ESCO industry, has been very active in the national law that's in place now, and is one of the main reasons that it's been so successful. So I'm so happy to have him on this panel to share with us what he sees of the government challenges and the prospects in removing government barriers in the Philippines. So Alex, please start off. Take off.
Well, thank you, Tom. I'd ask the organizers to flash my presentation, please. while they're getting my slides ready, I'd like to say that the global ESCO market is continuing to grow. The last record or report of the International Energy Agency says that the global ESCO market has grown to be at least $33 billion. And it's interesting that 60% of the global ESCO volume sits in Asia. So it's really a clear imperative that to help more to help the more nascent markets by getting knowledge and capital support from, let's say, development community or the governments, if not the more mature ESCO markets in the region. Today, I speak about the Philippine experience in removing energy efficiency and ESCO market barriers through energy efficiency policy reform and innovative financing. Next slide. The slide before that, please. The Philippine Energy Efficiency Alliance is a nonprofit. So we're kind of a hybrid between MASCE and Apcanindo because we started off the first 11 years from May 2005 as a pure ESCO association. But in 2016, we saw ourselves, hey, the energy efficiency market needs a bigger push from other energy efficiency market stakeholders. So we introduced 4 more membership categories. Aside from the accredited ESCOs, we invited energy efficiency technology solutions and service providers. The third would be the financiers and the investors. The fourth would be the nonprofits, the academia and research institutions. And the fifth would be large organizations which have embraced energy efficiency as a core activity. And together we partner with government. We help government in steering policy and market reforms. And I think the biggest output was the passage of the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act. After 29 years of sliding back to voluntary regime, we're back to a mandatory regime starting in 2019. And we call ourselves PE2 for short. Next slide. The second hat I wear is that of the Asia Pacific ESCO Industry Alliance. I had the honor of convening 10 country ESCO associations to create a regional platform for knowledge exchange and very soon capacity building resources. So we now have 10 country associations. I'm happy to report that Apcanindo was accepted as the 10th country ESCO association 2 months ago. And we now have the ESCO associations of China, India, Indonesia, Japan, Korea, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, Taiwan, and Thailand as members of this alliance. And we're in the process of registering a legal entity in Singapore. Next slide. Also, to help you understand the global ESCO network is a creation. We have, aside from Asia Pacific ESCO Industry Alliance, we have other ESCO markets. Donald mentioned Tim Unruh. He represents the US NAESCO over here. We have Europe. We have the other regional markets, all with the initial mission of finding countries that would incorporate an ESCO intervention in the nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement. So that's the initial mission of the Global ESCO Network. The secretariat is housed in Copenhagen, Denmark, through the Copenhagen Center for Energy Efficiency. And as NAESCO has mentioned, and also Tom has mentioned, the Efficiency Evaluation Organization, or EVO, is also a global partner of the Secretariat. Next slide. So the passage of the new Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act in the Philippines has finally rejoined the many jurisdictions shaded in dark blue on the left-hand side of the screen as countries or markets that have put back energy efficiency in a mandatory policy regime. Blessed with fiscal incentives, blessed with regulatory and financial mechanisms. And it's all about dispatching energy efficiency as the first fuel. I like to borrow this pie chart from the American Council for Energy Efficient Economy because it very much typifies the mission of PE2, that we'd like energy efficiency to be treated as a primary resource alongside fossil fuels and renewables and other energy sources. Next slide. So what we hope to achieve in the economy through 2040 is to shave off 182 million tons of oil equivalent, defer 45,000 megawatts, avoid 1.7 gigatons of CO2. But this will not come by itself. We need policy intervention. We need to mobilize $243 billion in capital investments in the next 2 decades. Next slide. So it's all about mobilizing $243 billion. Now, if we concentrate on the business as usual financing mechanisms, what we call the on-balance sheet of self-finance, debt finance, lease finance, then we believe that we could only mobilize $81 billion. The 2/3 slice of $162 billion will have to be mobilized through more innovative financial modalities, which includes off-balance sheet mechanisms such as ESCO performance contracts, PPP transactions, as Tom has described, joint venture agreements with government aggregation, large-scale government-led retrofit programs, and other off-balance sheet modalities. Next slide. So the major barriers, if we start at the lower left, first, energy efficiency is not a core activity of commercial and industrial end users, and even government agencies, even the public sector. Next, before the energy efficiency and conservation law was enforced, ESCO accreditation system was rather weak, and it did not muster enough qualified ESCOs. Third, ESCOs have limited access to debt finance. I think this is universal across Asia, as Thomas pointed out. Fourth, the ESCO sector needs to build capacities. We need M&V professionals. We need more IP MVP people who understand how to perform level 3 audits and perform and design M&V plans. Fifth, ESCO project investments need access to fiscal incentives. And last, government procurement disallowed ESCO contracts. Next slide. So the Energy Efficiency Conservation Law, which we call Republic Act 11285, addresses many of these barriers. It crafts a role for government. It creates a rather powerful agency of 8 ministries getting together and forming a specific interagency committee for energy efficiency and conservation. It certifies professionals and ESCOs. It sets energy performance standards, even for buildings and motor vehicles and appliances. It sets obligations for designated establishments. Compared to Indonesia's minimum consumption of 6,000 tons of oil equivalent per year, in the Philippines, designated establishments consuming 500,000 kilowatt hours a year will start to have obligations. Next, fiscal and non-fiscal incentives and other features of the law. Next slide. So the government, after issuing the law and implementing rules and the regulations, issued guidelines through department circulars of the Energy Ministry called DOE. First are the guidelines for the registration and certification of ESCOs. The second would be the guidelines for the registration and certification of energy conservation officers and certified energy managers and energy auditors. And the third set of guidelines is for the endorsement of energy efficiency projects for fiscal incentives, which was signed last month. Next slide. Now, this powerful 8-ministry interagency group called IEECCE passed two resolutions so far. First is directing all public agencies, national and local, to perform energy audits. Next, it's to phase out non-LED lighting across all public facilities. So that includes indoor lighting and public outdoor lighting. And right now, they are crafting Government Energy Management Program, or GEM guidelines, for investment grade audit requirements, as well as government procurement of ESCO contracts, which includes the solicited or competitive ESCO procurement process and the unsolicited ESCO procurement process. And we know that tailing behind would be the procurement processes for the PPP and the joint venture agreements with government corporations. Next slide. So it's all about mobilizing the traditional finance, what we call on-balance sheet finance, and also the more innovative finance, which is the off-balance sheet modalities. And you see that ESCO performance contracting is on top of this list. It is important that it grows in both the private sector and the public sector to flow a huge portion of the $162 billion that we hope to mobilize in the next 2 decades. Next slide. So I won't go into detail, but the three financing modalities right now is the self-finance. So if government agencies or large commercial and industrial entities have the capital resources, have the budget or appropriations to finance energy efficiency, then they use the self-financed modality. Next slide. Otherwise, a financial institution will flow debt capital to either the end user under the guaranteed savings, which was explained earlier, and the shared savings flowing through the ESCO. But this is both debt finance and in some cases using lease finance from a leasing company. Next slide. Now, the innovation that we bring is that what if ESCOs, my finding working across 14 markets in Asia and the Middle East, I find that energy ESCOs, 98% of ESCOs in developing Asia have very limited access to debt capital to fully pursue their pipeline of performance contracts. So what markets need is to flow equity capital alongside debt capital. And this would require third-party investors. It could be the form of project SPVs. It could form a government-owned super ESCO. It could be a private equity vehicles or funds specifically to flow equity capital to ESCOs instead of debt capital. Next slide. And what we have seen is that we have gotten government to recognize third party. If you look at the upper slide is, yes, they have already previously accepted that ESCOs could be the project proponent to seek incentives and endorsements from government as the financial vehicle for energy efficiency investments. But what is new is the lower chart at the bottom, where a third-party investor of equity capital becomes the requesting entity for the Ministry of Energy endorsement and registration with the Board of Investments for fiscal incentives on the condition that they engage a DOE registered or certified ESCO. Next slide. So this is just probably the busiest slide in my deck. And we talked about the barriers earlier in an earlier slide. But to promote off-balance sheet capital flows, especially through ESCO Finance projects, is one way to get energy efficiency projects outside the balance sheets and hopefully accelerate investment decisions by commercial, industrial, and even government end users. Next, it's the law defines the role of third-party project developers and project special purpose vehicles to flow equity capital outside the balance sheet of these end users. Next, it's a transition towards a two-tier ESCO registration and certification system. So the Philippines is now moving towards what we call, and Tom very well knows this, the registered ESCOs and the certified ESCOs. Next, the government now regulates training and certification of certain individuals, such as the certified energy conservation officers, the certified energy managers, and certified energy auditors. And it's the aspiration of PE2 to get CMVP training and template contracts adopted by either the government or industry. Next, government guidelines for the endorsement and registration of EE projects now recognize ESCO finance and third-party investor investments in as project proponents for fiscal incentives. And last, this powerful 8-ministry body, the Interagency Committee, is studying how the government energy management guidelines could include solicited or competitive and unsolicited ESCO procurement, which was not possible in the last 2 decades before the law. Next slide. The last concept I would like to share with in this conference is this. In the last 12 months, through the pandemic, we have demonstrated to both the executive and legislative branches of government that energy efficiency can actually be an economic stimulus, very consistent with the IEA position. And we have shown that per $1 million, energy efficiency creates 45% more jobs than the traditional energy transport and water infrastructure project, which governments tend to prioritize in fiscal stimulus or economic stimulus legislation. So we're showing that energy efficiency is indeed a prime driver. It's very labor intensive. It creates jobs in the countryside, and it could be used as an economic stimulus to jumpstart the economy after the pandemic downturns. Next slide. Just to conclude, the key takeaways from this presentation. First, the energy efficiency and ESCO markets need an ambitious and comprehensive policy framework aimed at strengthening the ESCO sector. And the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act is that one big policy supported by smaller policy issuances called guidelines. Next, the policy should enable, if not incentivize, self-financed, debt-financed, ESCO-financed, and even third-party investments in energy efficiency projects. Last, and certainly not the least, government and ESCOs should continue to work. They should strengthen that collaboration. So PE2 is just stepping up in its partnership with both the legislative and executive branch of government and with the energy ministry called DOE, and forge a long-term collaborative partnership, because this is a long-term transformation of both the energy efficiency and ESCO market through the next 2 decades on the road to 2040. So I thank you for your kind time. I leave my contacts in the next slide. So I'll be happy to answer questions later during the Q&A. Thank you so much for your kind attention. Back to you, Tom.
Great presentation, Alex. We have a quick question maybe you could address before we get to the end. One of our ESCOs, actually the state-owned ESCO, Widodo, asked if you had any specific advice on how to better develop the ESCOs in Indonesia. I'm not sure. Anyway, you might want to give just a quick your quick thoughts on that.
Well, I think number one, it's already a big step that the energy efficiency law or regulation that was passed in 2009 is being reviewed, and there is already I understand, a significant portion for ESCOs and fiscal incentives as the Indonesian government. So this should step up. The next is, as very well pointed out, it's to solve the access to finance, right? Solve the debt finance barriers with guarantees and other mechanisms, but also allow equity to flow alongside debt finance. So use multiple modalities to solve. And there might be even some structural changes at some point should government create an entity, a government, a tercero to flow equity capital to strengthen the ESCOs and not rob business from ESCOs as other countries might have done accidentally. so and I think Apkenindo's recent membership in APIA is also helpful because the flow of ideas, knowledge, business models between the more mature markets in Asia Pacific and the more nascent markets will also be helpful to inspire market reforms in the Indonesian market. So yes, it's long haul. I think, Tom, you did a fine job in identifying the barriers, the removal of subsidies in energy. And I think what was not articulated is how regulated by OJK are ESCOs as far as financial services, because Indonesia may have to review the role of a financial services authority in ESCOs. Should it cover ESCOs, or should they let them be or regulated by another regulation? So that has to be reviewed as well.
Okay, thank you, Alex. And I just to piggyback a little bit off, I mean, because we don't have the great law that you have in the Philippines mandating the government units and all of them to do energy efficiency and jamming up the access to private sector capital. That's why we're going to keep out, and it specifically introduces the SPV is specifically defined in that model in Indonesia. The Indonesia regulations are very well articulated and follow the global model. We're just trying to streamline it down to the EE project. So if we're successful at doing that, I think different way of getting there, but the same end result, right? If we can get Indonesia is going to be well on its way. Thank you very much. So
absolutely.
Thanks, yeah, great presentation. We have to move on. Time ticks away as always, right? So I want to jump right immediately to our next speaker, which is Andreas Widodo, who's the CEO of Energy Management of Indonesia, which is a state-owned enterprise. Has been around for quite a while and has recently been, I don't want to steal his thunder, has recently become part of the state-owned utility, PLN. And I know his presentation is a little bit focused on the industrial sector, but we wanted to bring him in on the government side because he is a state-owned entity and is looking to, I think, grow and really expand the EMI business. So please, without further ado, Pak Widodo. Go ahead and start. Are you on mute, maybe? Hello?
Okay, sorry. I didn't realize. Can you hear my voice now?
Oh, no,
Pak
good.
Thomas?
You're back. Okay, great.
Okay. Thank you, Pak Thomas.
We can, yes, we can.
Yes, so
I know you got a lot of slides. It's going to be a challenge to get within.
Yeah.
Within 20 minutes.
A lot of slides, but fortunately, many of the topics that I want to cover is already discussed by almost all of the speakers. So I believe I can try to condense, to compress the presentation into 20 minutes or so. Okay, I would like to. Sorry. I have difficulty to move my slides to the next slide. Okay, one moment. Okay, the presentation will be divided into 8 parts, but I will take only maybe 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4, and 6. First of all, introduction, short introduction about our company AMI, and then I have to revisit a little bit about the ESCO definition, because to be honest, we are not now a fully ESCO, but we want to develop ourselves to be an ESCO company. So this is what we want to share. What is the motivation about the prospect of the ESCO in Indonesia, and also the challenges that we have been facing in develop in what doing that trying to reach what we want. And then skipping the business model, I already talked before. We want to talk about the ESCO market project in our understanding, and energy efficiency project in several other countries briefly, and lastly in the ESCO challenge, particularly in the industrial sector. This is what we have been pursuing from 2017, and some project example that we have done, which may a little bit reflect how we deal with the challenge that we face. So our company is a state-owned company whose vision is to become the strategic partner of the government of Indonesia for the environmental and energy conservation program, for developing this program for the sustainable Indonesia. So if we look at the sustainable development goals from the UN, we are related to number 7, that is the clean and affordable energy, and then number 13, the climate change, and then the number 6 is the clean water, and then the last one, this is very important, is how we encourage the collaboration in our scopes, particularly between the SOE in Indonesia, to speed up the energy efficiency program. So we were established in 1987 as a subsidiary of fertilizer companies in Indonesia. And then in 1993, we were upgraded into full SOE. And then briefly in 2021, the government has integrated us into one of the subsidiary, the PLN, the government decree was just made into effect in the last May by the Peraturan Pemerintah number 65 2021. So since the 1993, mostly we have been active as an energy auditor and energy efficiency consultants, and doing as an implementer of various bigger SOE CSR program related to what the supply of clean water using renewable energy. But starting in 2017, I was assigned to this company, we decided to move to build our capacity such in 5 years we can be a full ESCO company. So in this presentation, I would like to share the challenges that we are facing in build our capacity to be in ESCO, and what the effort that we have, the approach that we have taken to overcome the barrier. Okay, so I would like to revisit firstly the definition of the ESCO. That is a company who not only identify the potential of energy efficiency or a consultant, but it has to be able to develop, design, build, and arrange financing or assist the client to arrange financing in order to save energy, reduce energy costs, and decrease operation and maintenance costs. That is the definition from the U.S. Department of Energy, which is more or less similar to other definition from other institutions in the worldwide. So what we are focusing now is to develop our capability in developing engineering design, procurement, and construction, installation, commissioning of an energy efficiency project. We have already a project example that we can share in the final part of the presentation. And this is about the ESCO model already discussed by a previous speaker. I would like to again talk about the prospect of ESCO as our knowledge. Yeah, the ESCO market has been described by previous speaker is actually very huge. Yeah, in our opinion, globally. In 2017, it's maybe reached almost 27 billion US dollar, and mainly 15.1 in China. And in South Korea, I was informed it was about 1.3 billion. This is a big opportunity, and considering the size of Indonesia, of the GDP, and so on, and particularly in the future, actually the market for energy in Indonesia actually should have been very big already, but actually this is still in the very early development for the actual right now. And this is what in the USA and the Chinese country, the investment in energy efficiency is quite a big, significant, even if comparable to investment in renewable energy in the power sector and in the fossil fuel supply. Maybe this is not only included ESCO, but maybe another efforts in energy efficiency, such makes electrical appliances more or car more efficient. And if we take a look on the size of the ESCO project, is compared to like the industrial EPC project is relatively very low. So the individual projects in the industry range from maybe $1 million to 10 million US dollar, while in the building sector is around I don't know, this is just maybe up to 2 million US dollars. So considering the total quantity of the market, there's going to be very a lot of projects needed to be executed. That's why in China there are more than 2,000 ESCOs, most understanding, and maybe only 5% large-scale ESCO who are responsible for the almost 70% of the total investment. And in 2016, South Korea has like 300 ESCO, yeah, a huge number compared to only 4 ESCO in 1992. So our neighboring country like Malaysia, the electricity state company already have a subsidiary in the energy services sector, which is the TNP Energy Services Sendirian Berhad. And also there are many examples of state-owned SOE, big ones like in China, which also deal with environment, because environment is very related to energy efficiency, and then in UAE, and then this one is in India, and then Korea, of course, and Australia. Now, I want to talk a little bit again of the barrier of the ESCO in the industrial project is, of course, is the same, similar with what the other speaker have discussed. Yeah, but we want to put an attention, pay more attention on the technical, where in this is according to in the International Energy Agency, there are currently insufficient number of company that holds the specific skills required to develop ESCO project. So the companies that government hope to become an ESCO like us, the one of the SOA, we are actually just an energy audit consultants, yeah, right now or maybe particularly for 3 years. Particularly, this is what we know from the SOE, and we don't have the ability as a comprehensive contractor to carry out ESCO project contract. Furthermore, for the financial institution, there are still perceived, like the Pak Donald mentioned, the risk of the efficiency project is very, very big, and the social in the user of energy, the subject of the ESCO, they are still focusing and developing and their core business. So the view energy efficiency is strictly an environmental issue which is not suitable for investment. But even if environmental issue, the decarbonization and so on, will be very important in the future. If you do not want to take this seriously, maybe you will have problem, in getting maybe license to operate, and getting difficulties in selling your product abroad, and so on. So the one of the point that we want to share here is our our approach, how to handle it with this one. Yeah, the fact that ESCO has not progressed significantly, particularly in the industry. So we believe that maybe one of the cause is that should there be enough pilot projects that set an example for energy efficiency, and then it can be run very well. Then this projects can be extrapolated to nationwide, to private sector. Then the job of the SOE to pioneer, to open the way, to show the examples that these important projects can be actually executed very well. Yeah, so why not making a synergy program between the SOE in Indonesia? Because in the SOE we have a lot of energy users like Pertamina, PLN, Indonesia, the fertilizer holding company, the petrochemicals company, and so on. And there are also the financial sector SOE, like all of the state-owned banks, and also a financial company. And lastly, there are also EPC contractor and energy auditor like us who wants to be an ESCO. So as I discussed before, because of the size of the ESCO projects is relatively small, EPC contractors, conventional one that we already have several like Rekayasa Industri or Tripatra, IKPT, Wika, and so on, they will be maybe uninterested in this project because the size is too small for them to be competitive. A much smaller company will be more agile and more competitive in providing such a service. So that's why here we start to become the playmaker, how to start initializing the efficiency project. So we just directly give you an example where we do a project you know, the projects that is important to build our competence is that this is not purely ESCO, but it's something the embryo, the capacity building for us to have portfolio in the future, such our client can give us more trust to do some ESCO in the industrial. So in this project, we switch to not only, first of all, we're doing an audit study, not for a brownfield project, so not for an existing project, and then we improve the energy efficiency. But rather, this one is a greenfield project. It's start from zero. From zero, we already discussed or reviewed the design of the licensor and find opportunities how to improve energy. And then with the help of Pertamina. So Pertamina give us the chance to do this, and then also the contractor, which is PT Rekayasa Industri. We are a new player, but most of the engineers in EMI now before are principal engineers in Rekin. So it is possible for them to trust us and give us the opportunity to build our energy efficient plant. So this one is actually waste, sulfate containing waste that are resulted from a gas processing facility in Jawa Timur called the Jambaran Tiung Biru project, which treats 18 cubic meters per hour of sulfate containing wastewater. So even though the flow is very small, but the total project is quite considerable, which is for the engineering, design, and supply of equipment only and commissioning. So we thought piping, we thought civil work, and supply of instruments is already cost about $9 million. So for 140 billion rupiah, which is of course very large to compare EMI previous project. So this design is what modification of the original proposal, whereby using this design we can save the 40% of electricity budget by using in principle waste heat. So we utilize the waste heat in the form of the excess steam. So our scope is basic engineering design, detail engineering, and now the progress of the project is already 90%, proving that the synergy between the SOE, because we have the same owner, we can talk more open, and therefore this can be and realized, yeah. And the technology actually we developed with the Bandung Institute of the Technology, the Chemical Engineering Department, with Professor Chandra Setiadi. And we are supported by many partners, worldwide vendors like Falafel, Sandain, but the basic engineering we did. So this is the view, the upper view of the plan. This is only our plan. This one is about 100 meters length and then maybe 50 meters width, wide. And this is, yes?
I'm just going to say, yeah, we're going to have to ask you to shut it down. We're about out of time. We have to allow time for our main speaker, Director of Energy Conservation, to speak. Yeah, I'm so sorry, but yeah, please.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Well, that's okay. You can finish if you have a closing slide or something. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So by this project, we have try to build our capability, not only the audit, but also the engineering, the construction, the fabrication. So hopefully this will build capability which can be extrapolated into a full ESCO in the future. This is what we have done. Thank you very much, Pak.
Thank you very much. And I'm sorry we don't have time for questions. We're everybody's providing such great content, and really appreciate all the detail you provided on the projects you've done, and look forward to you advancing the energy efficiency in the ESCO industry as an SOE. So our next speaker by no means is the least important. We'll save the best for last, or one of the best for last, and who's a major supporter, especially of the PP70 revision, our new Director of Energy Conservation, relatively new, in 2021, Ibu Lupuspa Dewi, who prior to becoming the Director of Energy Conservation was Director of Planning and Infrastructure Development for the new Renewable Energy Conservation, EBTKA. So Ibu Dewi, please, I don't want to cut, I want you to maximize whatever time's available for you to please take the floor.
What time?
Yeah, so please feel free to, yeah.
What time? How many time?
You have plenty of time. You have 25 minutes, I think. It's okay.
Okay, it's okay. Thank you. Thank you. It is a pleasure for me to speak at this fabulous agenda. I want to extend my sincere gratitude and appreciation to the organizing committee for preparing today's event. As an excellent overview, in a very short time, I would like to center my presentation on regulatory challenges on the development of energy services company or ESCO. Okay, next slide. Next slide, slide 2. Climate has changed to so many things. We are now enduring heat waves across the entire northern hemisphere. Flood is almost everywhere, including Indonesia. Global warming is challenging our biodiversity. We risk crossing tipping point that shifts the planet from being our best resilient friends, dampening our impact to start working against us, it amplifying the heat. Let's talk about for a moment and look at where we are. We are drifting toward hot-house Earth. For each 1 degree, rise 1 billion people will be forced to live in conditions that we today largely consider uninhabitable. We need to get serious about the impact. We need to find a safe corridor for humanity to allow us all to become stewards of the entire planet, to provide a good future for our people. We need a new economic logic based on well-being. We need to reach climate ambition. One of them is invest in a green job. ESCO can make a major contribution for climate ambition, mobilizing capital, offering modern and efficient technology with turnkey appointment, and so on. However, we face a number of issues in getting themselves to the point where ESCOs can make major contribution to the growth of energy efficiency implementation and contribution to the climate change mitigation. In the next slide, it's about government role on energy efficiency. There is a major role for a government in promoting energy efficiency, developing the appropriate policy and program, define and establish cooperation and standard, and stimulating market in the later part. I may point out here, government has already issued several drivers for energy efficiency, roll out a grow relax of the opportunity of energy efficiency investment. Prudential regulation governing Indonesia target on energy efficiency could be more accommodative to enhance energy efficiency in every sector. Under the law on energy, we aim energy efficiency through stipulating several policy and developing programs. The energy conservation regulation, energy management, green building, as government guarantee on regulatory risk, also technical guidance and socialization targeted to increase level of awareness on energy use and public. For energy management programs, we encourage the implementation of ISO 50001. Currently, there are 47 companies in energy and mineral resources sector. 2 building and 64 industrial sector are certified and reap the benefit of its implementation. The government also be a role model for energy efficiency on building sector. Samat Bratanata building on DG and EECCE has already certified for ISO 50001 in 2012 on 2020 as the first certified government building. We are also launched award of energy saving contest of our Ministry Energy and Mineral Research Building and the nationally prestigious Subroto Award on energy efficiency on industry and building, giving benefit for the awardee of boosting their portfolio of environment value and also to promote the successful and energy efficiency implementation. We have also collaborate with donor agency and stakeholder relate to our effort to improve energy efficiency in technology and investment, review or scheme study, and technical assistance to accomplish evidence-based regulation. Work competency standard for energy auditor, energy manager, and also measurement and verification is also critical in our yard due to knowledge-based instrument of upscaling, efficiency, energy implementation. We have also developed energy management standard and energy efficiency standard for building and guidance. To stimulate efficiency energy market, government alongside stakeholders have had several workshops on every aspect of efficiency energy, capacity building, and certification. Also develop pilot project to demonstrate successful application. Provenly will increase market confidence and create more attractive conditions for efficiency energy finance and investment. For the financial aspect to foster market, OJK has played a key role in mainstreaming sustainable finance in the country through a number of policy and measures. One of them is roadmap of sustainable finance. The roadmap focuses on building the sustainable finance ecosystem by strengthening the implementation of environmental, social, and governance risks and supporting innovation and development of financial services and products. The key item is to develop and grow the energy services markets. In doing that, we are eager to develop sustainable project development and commercial financing in the long term, and actually get the private sector, bank, and financial institution to come to the table and provide finance. The main challenge is in engaging public sector into the energy efficiency and to engage as close as possible in providing appropriate services to make energy efficiency happen. The sector that often creates a huge market, a big opportunity for energy service industry. Okay, let's in next slide about opportunities and barriers in the public sector. So what are the opportunities and barriers in the public sector? Well, we need to address that there are tremendous opportunities in the public sector for improving energy efficiency. Most public sector entities are limited financing issues. Their equipment is outdated and are not properly being maintained. And they need to figure out ways to prove their efficiency, but they do not have the technical expertise or the ability to make this happen, which is why I suppose overall place on the sector needs implementation assistance. However, as we all know, there are a number of important barriers to expose. The road to success faces many barriers. Public procurement regulations are limiting the ability of ESCOs to provide proper services because public procurement requires the lowest bidder, which is not necessarily a good way to go forward for efficiency. Many public agencies cannot sign multi-year contract, so they cannot pay from saving, which is a major element of the ESCO services model. There are limits and retaining savings, so if a public agency saves energy and reduces cost, their budget is reduced. Next, they cannot use the saving to pay for the service provided by ESCOs. There is a very limited internal capacity to implement or manage ESCO contract, and financing is very difficult to obtain. Furthermore, in many government agencies, there are separate budgeting organization for capital budgets and for operating. And also, investing money requires capital expenditure saving go to the operating budget. And they don't quite often together to make things happen properly. Public-private partnership, or PPP, should be the one of the solutions. However, PPP projects commonly mobilize huge capital, and ESCO have limited capital to obtain a huge project. The other case is the definition of saving as revenue is different from availability payment, and often saving is considered as bonus. Other problem is the number of energy efficiency PPPs across the country has still remained limited. In turn, the lack of energy efficiency PPP contributes to banks and other market actors being unfamiliar with these types of projects and the risks, thus limiting overall appetite to provide finance to ESCO for these types of projects. We have essentially come up with a set of actions that will foster and promote the development. And we are essentially looking at 4 major tiers of set of action. First, to create a large and stable demand for energy service project is the public sector, because ESCOs require a certain amount of investment to get started. Secondly, remove the barriers to public procurement of energy efficiency services. Some of the barriers I pointed out in this slide, which make it very difficult for ESCO to enter into contract with public agency. Third, facilitate the adequate and affordable financing of ESCO project. Generally, ESCO is particularly the ones that are new in the market. That is not very mature. I find it very difficult to get bank and commercial financial institution to provide finance requires compliance. And fourth, mobilizing energy efficiency in public sector, particularly street lighting retrofit using PPP scheme. The ESCO can adjust or merge into consortium of implementing business entity, or IBA, in solicited PPP scheme, or in other case, ESCO can come up as lighting vendor, or lighting vendors seek an opportunity to establish ESCO model. Both may be also initiate on a solicited PPP scheme. So very quickly, let's take each of these 4 stairs and see what can be done. Because creating a demand for ESCO services, first step to enter the stair would be to increase the knowledge and awareness of ESCO model and energy efficiency opportunities in the public agencies. Increase their capacity by helping them for technical assistance to identify the opportunities for ESCO to participate in some cases, or public agency to establish energy efficiency targets and action plan. Okay, the last slide, about market driver for ESCO. In my opinion, there are 3 market drivers for ESCO development in Indonesia. First, the government mandatory for energy conservation on public and private sector. The mandates, however, usually have no funding attached at the same time. Many of our public facilities have been starved for maintenance and capital improvement. In principle, government regulation on energy audit and energy management system should have to grow demands or for energy services in coming years. To a certain extent, the energy services market may also naturally be driven by the growing number of companies looking to achieve energy saving. For example, those with ISO 2001 energy management requirement. This correlate with ESCO, which offer a lifetime to facility. Secondly, we are willing to see that ESCO move on and grow their market share. We can say that ECO is learned through these phases was that they had to include strategies on client, market, product, and company strategy, as well as introduce business model to lender and consumer. We do believe that this will make sure that ESCO has solid performers and the consumer that really be interested in the project. And finally, having a strict project measure saving verification process is a major support to the growth in our ESCO market Indonesia. Third, developing people. The transparency of efficiency energy guideline will direct and socialize awareness of society about efficiency energy, and ESCO will give the advantage of that. In terms of that, the human resources should know about the pointers and their detailing for each issue to mitigate the risk and benefit of the program. Capacity building to raise ESCO's capability is the important thing. Have great internal capabilities, as staff is the only company asset since ESCO or service companies. This employee are the real key to success. ESCO should have the ability to understand and integrate the best feature of their technologies to be delivered, what the best value in the option of technology and the energy efficiency. In ESCO business, technology is an enabler, but not the driver. I hope we all can come back here next year by delivering presentation of success story on ESCO model business in Indonesia. And of course, it will be possible by our cooperation and bunch of innovative ideas that come from our same perspective and on how we can develop the ESCO model as one of the solutions to the financing climate change mitigation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Bu Dewi. Really appreciate the thoughts and your ideas on the strategies. It's very, it's going to be quite difficult to achieve those. I had a quick question for you. I noticed that how important do you think the government market is? I think you said it is, and do you still think it's pretty important, right, for the government sector to be available to the ESCOs, right? I just wanted to hear what your thoughts were on that.
Can you repeat again your question?
Yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts on if you feel, if you also still feel the government sector opening that up to the ESCO market is really critical in Indonesia. I mean, I feel that way, but what's your personal opinion if you feel that's a critical step for opening up the market?
Okay, thank you for your question. It's a good question. I speak in bahasa, right?
Sure.
Okay. Oke, menurut saya government ya, pemerintah ya sudah membuka demand yang luas ya terkait dengan market untuk ESCO. Seperti ke depan kita sudah memberi ruang bahwa kewajiban-kewajiban industri dan juga ke depan bahwa pemerintah daerah regional yang di mana Indonesia memiliki banyak pemerintah daerah ya, itu mewajibkan salah satunya menaikkan juga standar atau pelaporan. Misalnya mereka wajib melapor dengan kriteria pengguna energi yang semakin dibatasi, semakin kecil gitu ya, sehingga akan semakin banyak yang wajib untuk menerapkan efisiensi energi. Saya rasa pemerintah sudah membuka ruang untuk demand-nya. Nah, tinggal bagaimana ESCO ya. ESCO seperti yang tadi saya sampaikan bahwa ESCO di sini memang harus mempunyai strategi ya, strategi untuk menangkap bahwa sebetulnya demand itu sangat banyak gitu ya, sangat banyak dan besar. Nah, di sini tantangannya adalah dari ESCO sendiri seperti itu. Kalau seperti tadi saya sampaikan di paparan ya, kan ada public sector ya. Nah, dalam public sector itu memang ada sedikit penjelasan ya, bukan penjelasan, mungkin sedikit pengaturan di dalam RPP yang akan direvisi ini, PP 70. Namun secara umum bahwa strategi dari ESCO sendiri ya untuk berkembang itu tentunya sangat diperlukan ya, mengingat pemerintah telah menyiapkan ruang demand yang sangat besar untuk lahan efisiensi energi ini. Mungkin itu Pak Tom.
Great, thank you. So I didn't see any other Q&As beyond one that was asked before. So does anybody have any questions? I'll open the floor to others. We have just a few minutes, 5 minutes. If anybody has a question. Okay, if not, I may just give a few closing comments. It's just we've seen from the U.S., from Donald, the impact of the governmental sector and its huge size. And they have a market they call in the U.S. called the MUSH market. That's municipalities, universities, schools, and hospitals. And that's been a dominant market that for ESCOs to grow. And that's within the various, those are local governments, essentially. That's in addition to the federal government. I've also was in China for 3 years, and their government market has, it's driven by government policy. When you look at the government or the ESCO market, while a lot of it's private sector because they have so much industry, that's where a lot of the ESCO business has been achieved, but it's been as a result of the mandates from the Chinese government, which is very enforceable. It's not like in our markets that we're accustomed to, where there's it's more of a stick where they can actually remove your operating license, if you do not adhere to the energy conservation. So mandating for all the businesses reductions in energy consumption has been a major driver in the ESCO market because of the lack of capital and the capital that they provide, which in many cases, so it's very much linked to the government effort in China. And of course in Philippines, as Alex said, I'm truly impressed with their national regulation mandating the government sectors to implement energy efficiency, and also the private sector, and then they're really supporting the ESCO market and in the regulation that they have. And then of course with lastly but not by least is the EMI. Pretty excited by the focus you have on going after the industrial sector, understanding like I do that it has tremendous opportunities, much larger projects, the scale is much larger, but on the other hand, the challenge is much greater in my opinion, versus getting a global governmental demand, because you have to go sell each owner of the business on the merits of the energy efficiency project. And for the reasons I said, it can be challenging. So are there any other comments or closing feedback from any of the other speakers? Want to jump in with a closing remark? We've got about 1 or 2 more minutes. Please feel free.
I'd like to jump in. This is Alex.
Sure.
Yeah, just complementing what you have said earlier, I think China and the US have grown to be the largest ESCO markets in the world. It was previously the US and then China overtaken it. But why have US and China ESCO markets become the top 2 ESCO markets in the world? It's because government fed them work. It's because government
That's right.
policy incentivized. It's because government gave business or mandated many of the enterprises to use their services. So it's an inspiration to many Asian markets. It's been an inspiration to the Philippine ESCO market. I mean, we probably will not go the extreme of the US ESCO market where 95% is fed by federal, municipal, and defense contracts, right? But it provides an inspiration that if we are to grow an ESCO market, then the government has to be a buyer of ESCO services. The government has to procure. The government has to enable. The government has to de-risk. The government has to incentivize all energy efficiency projects flowing through the ESCO model. And last but not least, true to the mission of the global ESCO network, we hope that more Asian countries, I'm still hoping the Philippines would be one of them. I'm hoping that Indonesia could be one of them, or Malaysia, or part of the Asia Pacific, that we somehow incorporate an ESCO intervention in the national determined contributions under the Paris Climate Agreement for your respective countries. So I close with that message.
Great aspirations. And I would just say one of the things that I viewed in the US and in China, while the government, them offering their facilities, what it does is it creates a market. And from that market, it enables sufficient scale for infrastructure, the ESCO infrastructure to develop, including the financing, the technical skills, and everything. And that's why I'm such a proponent of it here in Indonesia and in the other markets in Southeast Asia. So with that in mind, no other remarks. I'm going to take the liberty of closing this ESCO summit. And I want to thank the speakers very much for your time and all the participants. I really appreciate the support of IEECCE, Padadan, and Ibu Dewi. Really thank you so much for your participation. And we look forward to next year, like you said. Hopefully we have some good things to report, some pilot projects and some successes in Indonesia. Terima kasih.
Thank you very much.
Terima kasih Pak Thomas.
Recording stopped.